talk about why am I qualified to help you and why you should listen to me. So a little bit about me. I've worked in this type of restaurant business for many, many years. So I know what's involved. And I started off working in a busy restaurant, serving customers, doing all the different roles within a restaurant, and gradually worked my way up to store manager level, where I was in charge of around 20 employees. Now, this was a big transition for me to go from just a normal worker to someone who was now suddenly in charge of a team of employees, because there's so many things that you have to deal with. And I remember feeling scared, worried about whether I was making the right decision, what my boss would think, basically difficulty dealing with difficult employees. So it was a stressful time. And to be honest, I thought about giving up many times. I'm glad I didn't, and I stuck with it, and I persisted. And I learned a lot through trial and error, and seeing what worked and what didn't. And I was also fortunate to have training with and be mentored by some of the best people in the industry, which was invaluable for me. It was very very important to have someone, a peer that you can go to with your questions, with your issues, someone that can guide you, and that's very very helpful, because it can be quite difficult at the beginning. So anyways, after a few years working as a store manager and raising the sales to over £1 million, I was promoted again to supervisor level, and here in that role, I was basically in charge of a group of restaurants where I was overseeing the overall operation and looking after the managers who were running those restaurants. And collectively, our stores have continued to grow at a rate of 20% year on year for the last 6 years. So I'm not saying this just to brag, but just simply to point out that I've been through this, and fundamentally I know what works, what doesn't work, and the advice that I'm offering here will work for you. So anyway, I hope that puts things in perspective, and let's get into it. So what does it take to be a good restaurant manager? And I'm going to cover what I believe are the essentials. And I hope and I believe that you will learn a lot from this presentation. Right, so profitability and controlling costs. So ultimately, you are in business to make money. That's why we're in business. We're there to make a profit, and that's ultimately our goal. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business. So that's really the bottom line. And when you think about profitability, you have to think about what is costing you money. What are the costs in your operation? And basically reduce those costs or control them to maximize the profit as much as possible. So the two most important ones of these costs are the labor cost and the food cost. So the labor cost is basically how much money you're spending on your staff. So this is where your scheduling is going to be very important. What time people start, what time they finish, how many people do you put on a weekday, how many people do you put on a weekend, when do you send people home, etc. So this is a big parameter to look out for. And the second one is food cost, because again, you want to be controlling the amount of money you spend on food, and you want to be controlling the wastage that occurs in restaurants, because every restaurant will have wastage, and it's something that you want to keep a lookout for and control. So out of all the costs out there, because there's others, there's like electricity and gas and rent and so on and so forth. The ones that you have direct control over is those two, the labor and the food. Okay, so you put your focus on those initially, those two. Now, as I've said, above anything else, you're in this business to make money. But also you have to remember that it's a balancing act, because there's another side to the story. Because if you really try and run your restaurant with the minimum number of staff possible, and you give your customers a bad service because you're busy, you can't handle the rush, they're having to wait a long time, you're making mistakes because you're having to do too much, or even if you do things like you put too little ingredients in your food because you're trying to maximize your profitability, then eventually that's going to have a negative impact on your business, because it's going to give you dissatisfied customers who are not going to be coming back, and eventually your sales are going to decrease. So you have to find the optimum balance of having just the right number of people and to give you the great service that you need, and also obviously having the great product that you want for your customers, whilst at the same time maintaining your costs. Which brings us on to my next point. To measure the success of any restaurant, you look at profitability, as we've just discussed, but you also look on growth, okay? Because ultimately, whilst you want to maximize profit, you want to have growth year on year. And what growth really is your store getting more and more customers year on year and doing more in sales. If your store is getting more customers and doing more in sales, then you know that you're doing something right. And that's the kind of the parameter that you want to judge your store by. Because you can have a store that's doing a lot of profit but they could be really squeezing from the labor and from the food. And in turn, although they're making a lot of profit, they're not going to have customers returning, and therefore they're not really running a successful business. So what you want is those two parameters running together: high profit, but also growth. And as I mentioned before, the stores that I was running, the restaurants, they were doing 20% growth year on year. So that's something to keep in mind. So next point is what your role is in the company, what you have to think of yourself as. And a good analogy that I like to use is think of yourself as the conductor of an orchestra. Your role is to look at the overall operation of your restaurant and how it's performing. And you don't want to get bogged down in any one area. Okay, so just like a conductor, you want to make sure everyone's playing at the right time, in the right way, rather than you picking up an instrument yourself and actually joining the group and playing the instrument as well. You know, there's going to be many things that you're responsible for as a restaurant manager. You've got your customer service, you've got your quality of the food, you've got your health and safety, you've got your marketing of the store, you've got your training of your team, you've got your reprimanding of underperforming staff, there's motivation, you've got obviously your profitability, as we mentioned. So there's a lot to think about, a lot to do, and what you don't want to be doing is getting stuck into the nitty-gritty of things. Doesn't mean you're not aware of what's going on in your restaurant. Doesn't mean you haven't been in every role, so you know what's involved, and you can put yourself in your staff's shoes, so you can see what they have to do to understand the role better and kind of better see if you can improve things, or just so you understand what they're going through. But ultimately, you are not going to be involved in a role that you could hire someone else to be doing. So a good mindset to have is this, and I see this with all successful store managers, restaurant managers. How can I train my team to run this restaurant without me? So ask yourself this: how can you train your team to run your restaurant without you? Because if you're taken out tomorrow, if someone came to you and said, right, in a week's time, or tomorrow, or whenever it is, you will be leaving this restaurant, what system do you need to put in place to be sure that that restaurant runs exactly as it should? Who do you need to hire for this to take place? Who do you need to train? What communication structure do you need to set up? Because if you have this mindset, you're really going to look at your restaurant from a different perspective. And I know that this is a little bit advanced, but just have a think about what I've said and see how you could implement this in your own store. And like I said, all successful managers I know have this mindset. And they have a team in place where people are trained on each position and cross-trained, which leaves the manager basically to take the restaurant that extra 20%. Okay. So in relation to this, you want to know what your value is. Because if you're getting bogged down with doing things like cleaning tables, for example, that's a job that you could hire someone for $5, $6, $7 to do, rather than spending your precious time doing it yourself. And you're far, far too expensive to be doing small jobs like this. And if you get bogged down with doing those kinds of jobs, you're basically going to shift your focus from the important tasks that someone at your level should be addressing. So this brings us on to the next point. Stop micromanaging people and trust them to do their job. So as we've said, you've got to get some altitude and come from a higher position and see the overall operation rather than get stuck kind of micromanaging everything that people are doing. And the fact that you're delegating tasks to people allows you to take kind of a broader view and deal with the overall operation of your restaurant and seeing it from an outside perspective rather than getting stuck in the nitty-gritty side of things. In fact, delegation allows you to get a lot of leverage in terms of managing your overall operation, and it's one of the things that gives you, in my opinion, a very big return on your investment. So train your people well, delegate tasks to them. It doesn't mean don't oversee what's going on, but basically give them the training they need and then give them the autonomy to do their job themselves. Delegation, from what I've seen, it's the hardest thing to get to grips with because ultimately you are responsible for the overall operation. But this is one of the things that produces the highest reward, in my opinion. And it is counterintuitive. But to have more control, you've got to be prepared to give away bits of control here and there to your staff. So again, don't get me wrong, you're still responsible for the results of your team. You don't want to be too hands-off, but at the same time, you don't want to be looking over the shoulder every minute to see what's going on. Okay, so think about this one. Next, being too friendly. So this goes back to basically what your employees think of you being too friendly with them. Ultimately, you want to maintain respect in the workplace, so you want your staff to respect you. If you become too friendly with your staff, some employees will see that as weakness. They will see you as their friend. People will take advantage. Other people will think that you've got possibly people that you favor and get upset by it. So what I'm trying to say is that if you're not careful, this kind of thing can affect your operation. It can affect how well people do their job in your restaurant. So people have to know that the relationship with you is based on their job performance. That's the relationship. You're their employer, you're their boss, and if they don't do their job, you may have to fire them. And if they're too friendly, like I said, they're going to assume that maybe you won't take the step because you're friends. So in a way, it's kind of an unfair position to put them in, because you're being too friendly, and then they slip up, and then because you were too friendly, they mistakenly thought that you're going to let them off the hook. So it puts you in a difficult position. And like I said, you don't want to be seen as someone who's got pet employees or favorites, because again, it will undermine your ability to manage your team. So that doesn't mean you can't be nice. It doesn't mean you can't take an interest in their life, ask questions, about what's important to them. But it is a fine line to tread, and you've got to always maintain that boss-employee relationship. So there's more about this in my book. The links are below this presentation. Next, hiring the right people. Okay. It's very, this is one of the things that you've got to take a lot of time doing, selecting the right person to work with you, because it's very expensive to hire the wrong people, and it takes time, it takes money, it takes a lot of stress to replace them. Okay, so there are certain when you're doing the hiring process, there's certain warning signs that you need to look out for. Always be doing your referencing, so call their previous employers, check on them, see how they were. But ultimately, employee turnover, it's very, very costly, and it's going to cost your business, and it's going to eat away from that profitability that we spoke about earlier. So you want to do your best to hire the right person by doing your research, by making sure you're asking the right questions. Again, more about this in my books. And if you do get this wrong, yeah, it can cost the company a lot of money. Sorry guys, I've lost my train of thought. So basically, take the time to hire the right people, and don't think that this is something that you can just hire anybody and it'll be fine, because if you've got the wrong person in the team, I'm sure you've heard before that one bad apple can make the rest of the team, it can reduce the morale of the team, demotivate the team, and it can really impact your success as a restaurant manager. So just be very, very careful with this, and you have to think about that. When you got the wrong person, you spent time, you spent energy, you spent effort, money, training them, etc. So just you'll make your life a lot easier by having the right person. And also, they might damage relationships, with not only with your own staff in the store, but with customers. So you can imagine how much money that's it's not just going to cost you time, all the stuff we discussed earlier, but it's going to cost lost customers in your restaurant and you can't put a price on that, because each customer is worth a lot of money. So take note with this, and I haven't even discussed employee productivity and morale, but that's something else that will be impacted by having the wrong person in your team. So point is, get this one right above anything else. Next, dealing with difficult employees, which is related to the previous one. And I'm going to tell you a little secret here. Trying to change a difficult, unproductive, or unmotivated employee is a very tough task. I'll say that again. Trying to change a difficult, unproductive, or unmotivated employee is a very tough task. So to save yourself the headache, you want to make sure that you've got the right person working with you. Okay, and I've hired people in the past that have been fantastic from the beginning. Haven't had to do anything. They've come in, they want to work, they want to do well, they're pleasant people, they're great to work with, they're professional, they're great with customers. Wow, that's what you want. On the flip side, I've hired people who have been extremely difficult, and they haven't been good with other team members. They've stressed everybody out, they've stressed me out, and really I tried everything to change the situation, but it was a kind of a futile exercise. Now, that's not the case with everybody, but my point is, start with the right person and you won't have to be thinking about how to handle difficult employees or how to deal with underperforming staff. However, even if you've done your homework and you've thought you've hired the right person, it's inevitable that sometimes you're going to run into your fair share of difficult employees, and how you deal with them is going to make a big impact on your managerial career and the success of your restaurant, as well as your well-being and your health, because dealing with difficult people is a very stressful process. So again, in my book, I discuss the main types of difficult people, the main situations that you're likely to encounter. People who are late, people who answer back, people who are rude, people who not in the right uniform, all that kind of stuff. And you can learn how to tackle each one, what to say to each one, to really eliminate those issues straight away. But here are a few pointers for you. Tackle each problem early. Don't let it fester, okay? Because it could get worse, and it's going, like I said, these things affect other people working in the restaurant. Also, make sure that you yourself understand your company's disciplinary procedure, and that you use it when necessary. More about this in a second. And then if you notice that someone is just not working out, they're not listening, then you need to start that disciplinary procedure and take things down that route. Understand also that no one in the company is irreplaceable. No one in your restaurant is irreplaceable. So don't get in the false mindset that, oh, I've got this person, he's great, I can't do without him. I know he does these bad things and he's not good at this, but he's just brilliant at what he does in the job. Don't get caught out in that mindset, because I've seen brilliant people who I thought were brilliant at what they're doing. They've left, and I've got someone, and they've been even better. Okay, so there is always somebody who can do just exactly the same job or even better. Okay, and why do I say this as well? This is why I said earlier that having a team that's cross-trained, 2 to 3 people that can do each position, so you don't leave yourself short, so that if someone decides to leave, or or someone is not doing their job properly, and you decide to go down the disciplinary route and fire them, you've got options, and you've got options. You've got people that you can put in that position, so that you're not held to ransom by any individual employee. Okay, so keep that in mind. Next, understanding employment law. Okay, this is non-negotiable, and this does affect the success of any store manager and how good a restaurant manager is, because to be a good restaurant manager, you have to understand employment law. You have to understand the law with regards to work and how it affects you and the company and the people working for you. So this is really non-negotiable, and it's not something that you can neglect. You've got to have a good understanding of it, otherwise it could cost you dearly. And obviously the company that you work for. So this is not only for your own actions, so how you act to your employees, what you do in sort of how you interact with them, but it's also how employees under your management are interacting with each other. And if anyone is doing anything to someone else, that could cause your company to be taken to a tribunal. So make sure you familiarize yourself with employment law. Have someone who specializes in that department that you could go to for advice, and make sure that you use that when necessary. Okay. At the same time, obviously, being a restaurant, you're going to be serving food, so food safety is very, very important. It's a very important concern, and you've got to make sure that you're following the guidelines for keeping food safe. Ensure everyone who's working with you is trained to handle food. Document all the training that you've done with your employees, and ask them to sign to say that they've been trained. So having documentations in place in case you get an inspection from the environmental health people, or just so you know that you've trained your team and that you're serving healthy food to your customers. And this is non-negotiable. So go through all training, make sure it's all documented, And make sure you've got procedures in your restaurant to keep your food safe, and that you check that these are being followed by your subordinates. So this is critical and can't be ignored. Okay, customer is king. This is self-explanatory. You are in business to serve customers, so you've got to do everything that you can to keep the customer happy, because he's the one that's spending money in your restaurant. So keep this at the forefront of your mind, and make sure that your team, your staff as well, they echo your sentiment. They also understand the value of a customer. And I don't need to tell you that each customer is worth a lot of money. And so you've got to make sure that they're treated with respect. And if you do get complaints, make sure you handle those quickly. Give the customer what they want and give them more than what they want. Very, very important. And really, the value of a customer. I mean, if you've made a mistake in your restaurant, you've given them the wrong food, don't hesitate to replace it straight away. Don't hesitate to offer a coupon for next time that they want to come to your restaurant. So do whatever it is that you can to put things right if things do go wrong, as they sometimes do. So that's on that one. Okay, well, I hope you've found this useful, and if you've got any comments, I've provided my email, so you can just contact me on paulbrendan1@gmail.com. Again, I'm going to link to my books below this video, so take a look at those, because I'm sure that they will answer a lot of your questions that you have, and you'll find those useful also. And if you do want to more personal one-on-one coaching, then I can offer that also. Again, contact me via the email that I've mentioned. Thank you very much, and I hope you found this useful.